comprehensive review and a consideration of the Finance Bill of 2025. Honorable Speaker, these men and women have had to work even during weekends and holidays, usually from 9 a.m. all through midnight, every single day, traversing 20 different counties of this great republic to ensure that this House has a comprehensive report on this bill. Honorable Speaker, the task now rests with this House to dutifully deliberate on the committee's report and the proposed tax measures with a view to ensuring that this country has a prudent balance between revenue mobilization and expenditure obligations. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that the bill supports sustainable economic growth while remaining responsive to the needs of the people. Honorable Speaker, unlike previous finance bills presented to this House, the Finance Bill of 2025 is not merely a revenue-raising tool, but a vital policy-making instrument that is reforming the broader tax landscape. Its central focus is to enhance tax revenue collection through strategic administrative reforms and improve taxpayer compliance, rather than by introducing new taxes. The bill proposes the simplification of existing tax laws to make them clearer, more predictable, and accessible to all taxpayers. This simplification includes consolidating overlapping provisions and eliminating outdated or redundant clauses that continue to burden the current legal framework. Honorable Speaker, the Finance Bill embodies the government's commitment to modernizing tax administration and fostering a culture of trust and cooperation between the Kenya Revenue Authority and its citizens. It introduces a range of policy measures designed to strengthen the efficiency of revenue collection, including the use of technology, improved data analysis, and risk-based audits. These reforms are aimed at curbing tax evasion, expanding the tax base, and ensuring that all eligible taxpayers contribute their fair share of tax. Mr. Speaker, the decision by the Committee on the Finance Bill 2025 is anchored in a well-established framework and past legislative measures. Since the enactment of Finance Act of 2023, the committee has operated under a consistent set of guiding principles and policies that have shaped its review of various tax measures, including the Finance Bill of 2024, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, the Business Laws Amendment Act of 2024, the Tax Procedures Amendment Act of 2024, the National Tax Policy, and as the overarching framework, together with the medium-term revenue strategy, which has been very central to these efforts. These policies, Honorable Speaker, aim to ensure predictability and sustainability within the tax system, thereby fostering a more environment for business. Mr. Speaker, since the enactment of the Finance Act of 2024, this House approved a series of tax measures aimed at achieving specific revenue targets that support fiscal sustainability. The Finance Act of 2022 had a projected revenue of 22 billion shillings. The Finance Act of 2023, 211 billion shillings. The Finance Bill of 2024 had intentions to raise 344 billion shillings. The Tax Laws Amendment Act now 2024, 49 billion shillings. By the Finance Bill of 2024, only 24 billion shillings. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, through the rationalization of tax incentives, improved compliance, and ongoing administrative reforms, the government projects to generate an additional 24 billion in revenue for the 25-26, underscoring the commitment to building a fair, transparent, and efficient tax system. Mr. Speaker, after reviewing the Finance Bill of 2025, the committee proposed a series of amendments aimed at enhancing the efficiency of the country's tax framework. In its deliberations, the committee carefully considered stakeholder submissions along with the strategic guidance provided by the medium-term revenue strategy and the national tax policy. Further, Honorable Speaker, the Pigovian taxing principle, Honorable Speaker, one of the works of the great British economics, Arthur Cecil Pig, Honorable Speaker, are also reflected in this bill. Measures such as maintaining tax exemption for renewable energy products and electric mobility companies, Honorable Speaker, correct negative externalities. By rewarding consumable practices, this aligns with Kenya's commitment to climate change under the Paris Agreement and Vision 2030. Mr. Speaker, many of the proposals draw from the Keynesian fiscal stimulus principle, which argue that for proactive government intervention to spurring aggregate demand during times of economic slack, Honorable Speaker, by incentivizing sectors such as housing, green energy, and manufacturing, this bill aims to create jobs, increase household incomes, and drive long-term economic growth while preserving fiscal discipline. As Richard Musgrave said in his book, The Theory of Public Finance in 1959, public finance is not just about raising revenue, but about shaping the economy and the society we, the just people of Kenya, want. Further, Mr. Speaker, the primary objective of the consideration of this bill is guided by stakeholder input with the views of Kenyans and established policy frameworks, which was to streamline tax expenditures, reduce revenue leakage, and promote fairness through targeted tax incentives aligned with the national development goals. In addition, Honorable Speaker, the amendments proposed by the committee aim to enhance predictability and stability within the tax regime, critical factors in fostering a conducive and competitive business environment that support long-term investment and effective economic planning. A consistent and transparent tax framework empowers investors' long-term decisions with greater confidence by reducing the uncertainty of legislative changes. Honorable Speaker, the committee conducted extensive public participation and based on the views received, proposed far-reaching amendments to the bill while also expressing support for certain provisions as originally drafted. Clause 2 of the Finance Bill, Honorable Speaker, under the definition of software, includes both the software itself and its distribution within the meaning of royalty. The committee observed that the distribution of software does not, by itself, constitute a royalty-generating activity, and therefore, including it in as such could lead to unintended tax implications for distributors. In line with international best practice and OECD guidelines, and to safeguard the interests of stakeholders and Kenyans operating the sector, the committee recommended the deletion of the phrase and includes distribution of software from the definition. This amendment seeks to provide clarity amid misinterpretation and ensure a fair, accurate tax framework for software-related transactions. Clause 4 of the Finance Bill proposes a cleanup of the amendments introduced under the Tax Amendment Act of 2024, which exempted all pension payments, including lump sum withdrawals, from income tax. However, certain provisions that previously granted separate exemptions for lump sum pension payments were not repealed, resulting in a potential ambiguity. To address this bill is seeking to repeal these redundant provisions and related exemptions. The committee supported this proposal, noting that the amendment enhances clarity and affirms that all pension payments, and I mean all pension payments, whether received as a lump sum or monthly, are fully exempt from income tax as originally intended. Clause 6, which proposes to remove the Kenya shillings 5 million threshold for the significant economic presence tax, was carefully considered by the committee. The committee observed that the existence of the threshold creates loopholes for revenue leakage, particularly because non-resident entities or individuals are not required to file tax returns. This is making it difficult for the Kenyan Revenue Authority to verify compliance. As a result, KRA is unable to confirm whether the threshold has been met and therefore hindering effective enforcement. To address this challenge, the committee supported the proposal to remove the significant economic presence tax threshold altogether as a means of enhancing compliance and reducing opportunities of tax avoidance. Clause 8A, 5, and 6, which pertains to tax deductions for the construction of stadia. The committee welcomes the proposal as a progressive step that aligns the government's agenda of promoting sports infrastructure and youth development across the country. Investing in modern sports facilities not only supports talent development, but also fosters social cohesion, community engagement, and economic activity through sports tourism and related enterprises. However, the committee raised concerns over the proposal to delete the provision that allows tax deduction for sponsorship of sports activities. The committee noted that this move would likely discourage private sector involvement in sports sponsorship, which has been instrumental in nurturing athletes, supporting local teams, and elevating Kenya's profile on the global sports stage. Retaining this incentive is in line with the government's broader objective of better bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which prioritizes youth empowerment, job creation, and expanding opportunities in creative and sports industries. As such, the committee recommends that the provision of sports sponsorship be retained to ensure continued collaboration between the public and the private sector in driving growth and excellence in the sports of this country. Honourable Speaker, it has been very interesting to note the growth of our sports sector and especially the love Kenyans are having for our local teams, Honourable Speaker. And this particular, both provisions of allowing private sector to invest inside and making it an investment deduction on their income tax and sponsoring these sporting activities is a great step to ensuring that we further enhance our local sports. And hopefully, we'll be able to fill in our stadium and watch our television sets as much as we watch small teams like Arsenal play, Honourable Speaker. Clause 8B1, which proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to allow interest deductions on mortgages taken for the construction of residential house, was reviewed by the committee. The committee noted that under the current legal framework, such deductions are typically limited to mortgages used for the purpose of purchasing of a primary residence, with no express provision permitting deductions for home construction. This gap in law has excluded individuals who opt to construct their own homes from benefiting from mortgage interest relief. To address this bill seeks to explicitly include mortgage interest deductions for residential construction, thereby reducing the tax burden for individuals financing home construction. The committee supported this proposal, noting that it promotes fairness and encourages investment in home ownership. Honourable Speaker, the role of taxation should not just is not to punish wealth, but to fund the common good and correct the market blind spots. Clause 8C and D, which proposes to introduce a time limit on the carry forward of business losses, was carefully considered by the committee. Currently, businesses may carry forward losses indefinitely, yet they are only required to retain records for 5 years. This creates verification challenges. To address this, the bill is proposing a 5-year cap. However, after listening to stakeholders, the committee amended the proposal to allow for an additional 5 years extension upon application and approval. This approach balances administrative efficiency with business flexibility. It aligns with public finance principle of time consistency and fair tax policy as outlined by Richard Musgrave, and by reducing abuse of indefinite carry forwards and promoting simplicity, predictability, and equity in tax systems. Clause 16 introduces a withholding tax on payments to non-resident ship owners. This proposal was supported by the committee as a strategic move to enhance tax compliance and revenue collection from foreign entities that operate in Kenya without a physical presence in Kenya. This measure reduces dependency on self-reporting and ensures earlier and more reliable tax remittances through withholding at source. The committee noted that with proper implementation of guidelines and digital systems, the measure can be administered effectively and fairly. It aligns with the benefit principle of taxation, which holds that those who benefit from operating in a particular market should contribute to its tax base. Moreover, this is consistent with the UN Model Tax Convention, which permits source-based taxation of international transport services. This reinforces Kenya's commitment to a fair, modern, and globally aligned tax system. Clause 26E, which addresses the taxation framework for special economic zones, proposes to limit tax incentives strictly to licensed SEZ developers, operators, and enterprises, rather than extending these benefits broadly across all entities within the zone. The committee observed that the current approach has enabled excessive access to incentives, which in some instances has been abused, resulting in high fiscal costs without commensurate economic activity. The proposed adjustment seeks to align with broader policy objectives of reducing tax-based erosion and profit shifting, while promoting fairness, neutrality, and targeted support within the tax system. The committee supported this proposal, noting that a more focused incentive structure will enhance accountability and ensure that the intended beneficiaries are those generally contributing to the economic objectives of the SEZ framework. Honourable Speaker, Clause 27, which proposes to remove the provision of the Income Tax Act that grants a special accelerated investment deduction of up to 100% for capital investments located outside Nairobi and Mombasa. This deduction currently allows businesses to claim substantial tax relief on qualifying capital expenditures, such as building machinery and industry equipment. However, Mr. Speaker, the committee expressed concern that removing this incentive could discourage investment in regions outside the two major urban centers. The accelerated deduction has been a deliberate policy tool to promote equitable regional development, industrial decentralization, and job creation in undeserved areas. Eliminating it may inadvertently widen regional disparities, slow down infrastructure expansion, and hinder government's efforts under a better agenda, which prioritizes inclusion in economic growth across all counties. Clause 28, Honorable Speaker, is providing for incentives for companies that are going to be certified by Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, where an investor who invests 3 billion shillings will get 15% preferential income tax rate for the first 10 years and 20% for the subsequent 10 years. But however, there is a provision, Honorable Speaker, that they must have a particular percentage of their senior management being Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. For startup, they're going to get a preferential income tax rate of 15% for the first 3 years and a 20% preferential tax rate for the subsequent 5 years. Honorable Speaker, this particular provision will lead to increased foreign attraction of foreign direct investments, grow our manufacturing as a percentage of GDP, Honorable Speaker, and most importantly, attract fintech companies into this country, Honorable Speaker. Even during COVID, we have seen financial services sector continue to grow. We must make Kenya the hub of financial services growth across the globe, Honorable Speaker, and especially across Africa. As you notice, Honorable Speaker, next week I will be tabling a report on virtual assets providers bill that will make Kenya the 4th country in Africa to provide a legal framework for trading in virtual assets. And these are cryptos, bitcoins, and virtual assets, and blockchain technology, Honorable Speaker. And if the Honorable House passes this particular law, Honorable Speaker, we are going to see a lot of these institutions set up based in Kenya and operate in the rest of Africa, Honorable Speaker. However, Honorable Speaker, Clause 28B, 2, and 3, which proposes to eliminate the preferential 15% corporate tax rate extended to companies involved in local assembly of motor vehicles and those undertaking the construction of at least 100 residential housing units, was carefully reviewed by the committee. After comprehensive consultations with stakeholders and members of the public, the committee resolved to reject the proposal. The committee recognized that this lower tax rate is a crucial policy tool in supporting strategic sectors that play a significant role in job creation, industrial growth, and addressing the national housing deficit. The committee further noted that retaining the 15% corporate tax rate is grounded on the principle of strategic economic support, which emphasizes targeted incentives to sectors with high multiplier effects. These incentives, Honorable Speaker, are well aligned with modern industry policy thinking, such as Jun Chang's theory of the development state, which advocates for state-led support to build competitive industries, and Michael Porter's cluster-based approach, which promotes the growth of sectoral ecosystems through focused policy and fiscal incentives. Supporting local vehicle assembly, Honorable Speaker, and affordable housing not only inspires direct employment, but also stimulates auxiliary industries, supports chains and service providers, and creates a broader impact, economic impact. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, maintaining this incentive ensures that there is policy certainty. It strengthens investor confidence and sustains momentum in key sectors that are central to Kenya's industrialization and inclusive economic development agenda. Clause 34, Honorable Speaker, is proposing to remove the word taxable from the relevant provisions, which was considered by the committee in the context of strengthening the tax administration. The committee observed that this amendment is intended to mandate the issuance of tax invoices for both taxable and exempt supplies, thereby addressing existing challenges in the accurate determination of total turnover. It also aligns with the current requirement under ITIMS, which mandates invoicing for all transactions, except where specifically exempted under the Tax Procedures Act, Cap 469B. The committee supported the proposal, noting that it will enhance transparency, It will improve record keeping and contribute to more effective and consistent tax enforcement across all sectors of the economy. Clause 36 and 37, which sought to reclassify certain suppliers from zero-rated to exempt status, were thoroughly scrutinized by the committee. The affected items included local assembly and manufactured mobile phones, electric buses, motorcycles and electric bicycles, lithium-ion and solar batteries, raw materials for production of fertilizer and animal feeds, and bioethanol vapor stoves classified under HS code 1200. These are all critical areas in this country's industrialization, food security, and green energy transition. The committee observed that these items had only zero rating status in the Finance Act of 2023 in a deliberate policy aimed at sustainable technologies and lowering the cost of essential goods and services. Reverting them to exempt status will not only reverse these gains, but also disrupt market confidence, increase input costs, and undermine private sector growth, particularly in emerging the job-rich sectors, such as mobile device assembly and electric mobility, Honorable Speaker. The committee recommends to retain zero-rated status for these key inputs, as well aligned with the government's broader policy objective under bottom-up transformation agenda and Vision 2030. These policy frameworks prioritize industrial growth, climate resilience, and affordable energy solutions, job creation, and sustainable agriculture. For example, local mobile assembly has created thousands of jobs, while the electric mobility sector, including electric buses and bicycles and motorcycles, supports green transport initiatives and offers affordable transport alternatives. Lithium-ion batteries production and the uptake of BEVs further contribute to environmental stability and reduce reliance on fossil fuels, Honorable Speaker. You'll notice, Honorable Speaker, for example, for lithium-ion batteries, Kenya is one of the largest manufacturers of lithium batteries, allowing us even to export to other countries, including Tanzania, Honorable Speaker. This has only been made able through this zero rating, Honorable Speaker. In as much as we understand the strategy, Honorable Speaker, by the National Treasury to try to reduce tax expenditures, which have been in excess of 500 billion shillings every year. And Honorable Speaker, these tax expenditures, remember, our development budget is partly around 650 billion shillings, whereas our tax expenditures is around 550 billion shillings. So our tax expenditures is almost as much as how much our development budget is, Honorable Speaker. But in as much as there is need to clean up the first and second schedule of the VAT Act on the zero rated and exempt status, it is also important to realize that we also operate under other protocols across the region. We have the East African Community Protocol, Honorable Speaker. We have the African Trade Protocol, Honorable Speaker, that will enable, if we do not have these incentives in our local market, it will enable end up importing those particular incentives of zero rating and exempt status is used properly administratively rather than punishing a whole sector and making us uncompetitive in the region, Honorable Speaker. Clause 36 proposes subjecting several strategically important goods to a standard rate of 16%. However, Honorable Speaker, after careful consideration, the committee recommends that these goods remain listed under the first schedule and continue to enjoy VAT exempt status due to their critical role in advancing key national development priorities. The goods in question include items used in the construction of tourism infrastructure, such as recreational parks and conference centers, sectors that contribute significantly to foreign exchange earnings and job creation. In 2023 alone, tourism contributed 10% to GDP and supported more than 1.6 million jobs directly. Similarly, the exemption for goods in hospital construction equipment, especially for specialty hospitals with at least 50 beds, is very crucial in strengthening health infrastructure and in line with our universal health care agenda. Honorable Speaker, the exemption of aircraft, sports, spare parts, and tourist transport vehicles also aligns with Kenya's ambitions to solidify its status as an aviation hub of the region and to boost high-value tourism. The VAT exemption for inputs used in affordable housing projects directly supports the government housing agenda by lowering construction costs and accelerating project delivery for low and income earners. Exempting renewable energy equipment also reinforces Kenya's commitment to transitioning to clean energy in line with the national climate and global sustainability commitments. Additionally, Speaker, exempting weighing machinery for hospitals ensures that the healthcare providers are not burdened with additional costs for critical diagnostic tools. The committee's recommendation to preserve VAT exemption for these items reflect a deliberate effort to align fiscal policy with the government's overreaching development agenda, ensuring that tax measures promote and not hinder progress in sectors that are very vital to economic transformation and our social well-being. Clause 52, Honorable Speaker, which proposes to grant the Kenya Revenue Authority
Chair,
broad access to personal data.
Order, Honorable Chair. You know, these are very technical things. You, just before you move from clause 36, you mentioned something about tax expenditure, and then you are talking of zero rating exempt. Could you explain them to members? Because I see you are losing so many members in terms of the effect thereof.
Honorable Speaker,
KJ is following. You can proceed.
Honorable Speaker, there are 3 VAT rates in Kenya. A product can be vatable under the standard rate of 16%, or exempt from VAT, or zero rated. Now, the difference between a zero rated and exempt product is that for a zero rated product, the manufacturer is allowed to claim the amount of VAT they spent during input. Just to demonstrate, if a manufacturer is manufacturing this bottle of water, there are costs involved in the plastic container, for example. There are costs involved in the electricity bill that are vatable in manufacturing of this bottle. And therefore, the final outcome of this, like water, is vatable. So that means that when it is zero, if this product was zero rated, then the manufacturer is allowed to claim the amount of tax they spent on their inputs. Whereas in exempt, although there is no tax, there is no VAT in an exempt product, however, they are not allowed to claim the amount of tax they spent in inputting, as an input, Honorable Speaker, in manufacturing of that particular item. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, this is why, ideally, as a product, a zero-rated product is meant to be cheaper than an exempt and than a standard rate product, Honorable Speaker. However, what we're referring now to tax expenditures is, when you are now claiming of input VAT, it means this is foregone tax by the government. It actually means that where your input tax could be higher than your output tax, then you go to KRA and ask for a refund. And now the challenge with this, and that's why you can see a deliberate effort by National Treasury trying to clean up the first and what we call the first and the second schedule of the VAT Act, which is now zero-rated products and exempt products, is we have many fictitious claims of input VAT. Where we have some entities that employ more accountants, Honorable Speaker, than actually the officers who run. An example in hospitals, you find, maybe an example, for example, one of the, I don't want to give an example of a particular institution, that would be to dispatch them. But you've seen institutions that say manufacturing X product, but the number of accountants they have in that business is more than anyone else. And therefore, all they do is process refunds for VAT. Secondly, the budget that we provide to National Treasury and through KRA for tax, for those refunds, is only 5 billion, against a demand of excess of 50 billion at any particular time. And therefore, that also creates a loophole, because how do you determine who gets paid, who gets refunded when, Honorable Speaker? And therefore, the ideal situation in future could be for the products that we must protect is probably introduce a lower VAT rate of maybe around 2% or 3% or 4%, so that we remove this issue of zero rating, Honorable Speaker. However, this bill has provided now for a recourse where KRA is able to satisfy itself that a particular entity is misusing this particular product is supposed to be zero rate or exempt, Honorable Speaker, then there is a penalty for it. A very good example, Honorable Speaker, one of the debates that we've had, even with you as a member of our committee, has been the zero rating of transportation of sugar, of sugarcane in sugar belt areas. So although that is a very huge cost to those particular areas, now the question has been, when you zero rate, now you allow them to claim that fuel, for example, they use on the tractor, how do you verify that fuel was actually used for the transportation of sugarcane? Or is that fuel bought and goes to support other activities, but is claimed or said to have been used to transportation of sugarcane? So those are the complications, Honorable Speaker, that we deal with now vertible products, exempt products, and solid products. And that is what now accounts to tax expenditures. And I hope I've been able to explain to you, Honorable Speaker. So Clause 52, Honorable Speaker, is proposing to grant Kenya Revenue Authority, and this is very important, broad access to personal data for tax compliance purposes, including trade secrets and confidential customer information. The committee thoroughly scrutinized this provision, and after extensive public engagement and consultation with stakeholders, we found that this proposal fails to meet the constitutional standards set under Article 31C and D of the Constitution of Kenya, which guarantee the right to privacy. The committee also noted that the Data Protection Act, particularly Section 51, sets out clear and limited grounds under which access to personal data may be exempted from certain protections. Furthermore, Section 60 of the Tax Procedures Act already provides the commissioner or an authorized officer with sufficient powers to obtain necessary information for tax administration, subject to court-issued warrant. These safeguards strike a balance between tax enforcement and protection of individual, Honorable Speaker. As you check, if you check, Honorable Speaker, the Tax Procedures, the Tax Procedures Act, it expressly provides and gives power to Kenya Revenue Authority to require a business to integrate with their system. And they can even, through a court order, access any information they want from a taxpayer, Honorable Speaker. However, we provided for, through the Tax Procedures Act that we amended in December, Honorable Speaker, to exempt the following two from access by KRA. Trade secrets, A, and B, private and personal data. So by deleting this proposal, by deleting now, because the current Tax Procedures Act, to almost read verbatim, I don't have the act here, but I can try to remember what it says. The commissioner shall not require the taxpayer to provide information relating to A, trade secrets, B, private and personal data. So by this proposal to delete that shall not require KRA to provide that particular data, Honorable Speaker, it actually means that KRA can access all private and personal data and include even trade secrets, Honorable Speaker. There are some institutions that have a recipe for some shared with members of the public. Now, what happens if you give access to such particular data, Honorable Speaker? So we feel that there is sufficient provision in the Tax Procedures Act on access to data, and we do not need to expressly provide for absolute access to trade secrets and private and personal data held by taxpayers, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in the view of the existing legal framework and of concerns by the Kenyans, the committee concluded that proposed amendment is both unnecessary and potentially unconstitutional. The committee has remained consistent on this matter in previous finance-related measures brought before this House. Moreover, Honorable Speaker, this decision aligns with the global best practices, including the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, a landmark policy, privacy law that took effect in European Union in May 2018. Although GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulatory Framework, is an European-based law, Honorable Speaker, its principles have set global standards for data protection and directly influence Kenya's, our own Data Protection Act. These principles emphasize individual control, transparency, and strict conditions for data processing. Upholding these standards is vital for protecting citizens' privacy, maintaining public trust, and ensuring that Kenya's regulatory environment remains credible, secure, and investor-friendly in an increasingly digital world. Mr. Speaker, the committee proposes the introduction of a new clause 28A to amend paragraph 1C of the second schedule of the Income Tax Act. This amendment will allow telecommunication operators to claim investment allowance on the cost of spectrum licenses, just as they currently do for the items like optic cables. For spectrum licenses acquired before 1st of July 2025, the reduction will only apply only to the remaining unclaimed portion and will be spread over the remaining useful life of the license. The committee fully supports this proposal as it aligns with our agenda to access on digital transformation and youth empowerment. Spectrum licenses are key investment for telecom companies. Allowing tax reduction will ease the cost burden and encourage further investment in digital infrastructure. This expansion will create opportunities for young people by improving access to digital services, supporting digital entrepreneurship, and driving job creation in the technology and innovation sectors, Honorable Speaker. It is quite unfortunate, despite Kenya being one of the countries with the highest mobile connectivity, there are still some places in this country that there is no network. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, this particular incentive would incentivize our telecom companies, Honorable Speaker, to create, to have more mobile connectivity, Honorable Speaker, including in some of the places in my constituency, like some lower parts of Mareshani. Honorable Speaker, these committee's proposals reflect not only a stakeholders' input, but also a sound economic reasoning grounded in Canisian's fiscal stimulus principles. By incentivizing housing, manufacturing, and green energy, the finance bill supports aggregate demand, promotes employment, and stimulates growth in all while preserving fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, as we deliberate the finance bill 2025, it is crucial to prioritize measures that effectively expand our tax base and enhance revenue generation. This may involve innovative tax policy approaches such as incentivizing compliance, simplifying tax procedures, and overreaching barriers that hinder our revenue growth. Mr. Speaker, addressing this issue proactively and implementing them effectively, tax policies will ensure that we increase our tax revenue collection in line with our economic potential. This will strengthen our fiscal position, allowing for investment in key sectors, social welfare programs, and infrastructure development that will foster economic growth to benefit all Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this huge task would not have been completed without the efforts of our dedicated and most professional secretariat staff. These unsung heroes work day and night without any supervision to ensure that the committee report before the House comprehensively responds to each of the 5,000 plus submissions received by this committee. Honorable Speaker, this report would not also have been possible were it not for the commitment of members of the Finance and National Planning Committee, Honorable Speaker. I am proud to be one among the equals who lead a very effective, committed team of members of this particular committee, Honorable Speaker. We were able to divide ourselves in groups, and with the record 10 days, covered public participation in 10 different counties across this Republic, Honorable Speaker. In conclusion, in your inaugural speech at this House as the newly appointed Speaker in 2023, you indicated that one of our key visions for the National Assembly was to go e-Parliament. Honorable Speaker, I am proud that in consideration of the Finance Bill of 2025, it was a paperless exercise. The only paper in the process was a copy of the report we tabled last week. I also to inform this committee, Honorable Speaker, this was an invention of a young man, an intern in the Committee of Finance and Planning, National Planning, called Alan Kimani. This young man, Honorable Speaker, an intern, a computer science graduate of Kenyan University, Honorable Speaker, developed a QR code that stakeholders, when it came to submit their proposals, they would just scan and they would register without having now to jump the queue, and we will know who came first and give them a first chance. In addition, stakeholders did not have to bring photocopies of their submission, Honorable Speaker. They were able to just scan the QR code, access the bill itself, give them an option to comment clause by clause over the bill, access the explainer that this Honorable House had published, Honorable Speaker, and if they want to give general comments, to be able to do that, Honorable Speaker. This made the process seamless and paperless, and I want to laud this young man called Alan Kimani, because that is how we should grow our technology. That is how we should use our energies, our young people, Honorable Speaker. And I want to challenge young people in this country, Honorable Speaker. I have seen a lot of people even text me, Honorable Speaker, asking, is it true you are taxing new babies? Is it true we are taxing this and the other? And Honorable Speaker, it's unfortunate some of these people are very learned people. And this public finance, this is the finance bill, and even the explainer are publicly available documents. Just by a simple Google search or a simple access to Parliament website, Honorable Speaker, you will access this particular information, Honorable Speaker. But they don't bother to read, Honorable Speaker. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, the disinformation and the deliberate misinformation and disinformation is sickening, and it must stop. These people who deliberately create stories, whereas they know it is lies. You are saying there is tax for new babies, and you know for sure there's nothing like that. They should be ashamed, and they should use their knowledge for better purposes, Honorable Speaker. With that, I beg to move, and I request the Honorable CPA Julius Ruto, the MP for Great Member of Keses, to second.
The Honorable CPA Julius Ruto.